was the announcement before the announcement, when all online threads, not a soul doubted Dennis Porter, not even the feds. Twitter Spaces reminders were set with such care, in hopes that Dennis Porter would soon announce announcements there. The masses were constantly checking their phones for news to find, while visions of Bitcoin reserves danced in their minds, and plebs in their group chats, and I in my app had just settled our brains for Sailor's speculative attack, when out on the web there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the computer, I flew like a flash, tore open the browser, and threw up the sash. The glow of the screen on the new fallen announcement gave the luster of midday to objects below. When, what to my wondering eyes should appear, but a headline so bold, it caused quite the cheer, with a little old icon, so lively and quick. I knew in a moment it must be Dennis Porter's trick. More rapid than eagles his followers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called politicians by name. Now conservatives, now liberals, now anarchists and more. On bulls, on bears, on all who keep score, to the top of the charts, to the front of the news. Massive breaking announcements will all be made soon. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the internet the prancing and pawing of each eager bet. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the feed, Dennis Porter came with a bound. He was dressed in his suit from his head to his foot, and his positioning was long calls. He had not one single put. A bundle of papers he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler, just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a Bitcoin podcaster, and the beard of his chin was thicker than plaster. The stump of a pen he held tight in his teeth, and the ink it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and an intoxicating smile that entranced all who listened on Spaces for a while. He was confident and charming, an alpha orange pillar, and I laughed when I saw him. He was a stone-cold lady killer. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the screens, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, his Spaces audience grows. He sprang to his platform, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, happy announcement to all, and to all a good night.
Welcome to this edition of the Bugle Weekly. This is your co-host, Richard Reeser. Joining me today, as usual, is Rod Palmer. And are you feeling the Christmas spirit? You feeling Christmassy?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. I bought all my family members. I got them Umbrel nodes and open dimes for Christmas. And I made 2-hour-long videos, Bitcoin podcasts, essentially personal Bitcoin podcasts for them, so they could listen to that and learn how to use those gifts. And then I also I burned, some old CDs, some CDRs for some of you that are old enough to remember those. And I put 40 hours worth of Bitcoin podcasts individually selected for each family member. And so I'm hoping that they'll listen to those on their Christmas break as well. What about you? Did you get any cool presents for the greasers?
Oh, yeah. We've got tons of Marlboro memorabilia that we're going to be dishing out. But, yeah, so we had an interesting conversation with fundamentals. And one thing I should have brought up. So, like, I think Jewish people in America have made, like, a horrible tactical decision, which is to reject Christmas. Because, you know, like, many of them, they celebrate Hanukkah, but they should also celebrate Christmas. It's part about it being American. It has nothing to do with being religious. And this whole psyop, this war on Christmas, is really just a communist plot, because what Christmas ultimately represents is it represents American capitalism. It represents, you know, buying gifts for your family. Essentially, it's about boosting the U.S. economy. It's about doing it with credit card debt. And, you know, if you're rejecting that as a Jew and you're just saying happy holidays or whatever gay beta shit, you're being un-American. So, you know, whether you're religious or not, you have to admit, like, Christmas is a thing and submit to it.
There is, I mean, I cannot think of a better event, a better holiday to bring American Christians, like he said, it's not even religious, it's just Americans in general and Jewish people together, like America's love for consumerism. Because, I mean, Christmas, like you said, Christmas represents American capitalism. It represents consumerism. Americans love consumerism, and, you know, and Jews love, you know, loaning people money at really high interest rates. And those things could not come together more perfectly than they do at Christmas. And I think that is a perfect reason for Americans, Jewish and everyone else, to celebrate together. We're not trying to take away your candles and your dreidel spinners. We're trying to add more to supplement your life and your experience.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, like, people should look at Christmas as an opportunity to be able to afford taxes. You know what I mean? Like, you should be strategizing how to get the best write-offs with gifts. So, like, one of the most American things you could do is to couple consumer or, like, products, being able to buy these things and using it as a business expense to get a tax write-off.
Right.
It's very American.
Right, yeah. You know, and you know, Jewish Americans and the rest of the Americans, it's great to come together. Find a Jewish accountant and help him help you afford to pay your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Jewish people can definitely help you pay your taxes. Be able to afford to pay your taxes.
I mean, like, can you even trust an accountant if they're not Jewish?
You know, my grandma, she had gotten a bunch of trouble with the IRS, and it really affected her retirement and her comfort in retirement very negatively. And the reason that it happened is because my grandma trusted an accountant, a CPA, who was not Jewish. And it cost her a great deal of time in her retirement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, can you trust a libertarian podcaster if they're not Jewish?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'll be able to find one, though. You know, the only ones that have any viewings on like YouTube podcasts, you know, good luck finding one who's not.
I think Tom Woods he might be a Gentile, but
yeah.
I kind of wonder if he's trustworthy.
I think Tom Woods is mostly just popular with people from, like, Arkansas and, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee, but I don't know. Maybe I don't think he's very mainstream.
In the world of libertarian podcasts, he's kind of like he's
the
Peter
Lawrence
McCord.
Lepard. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's at the top. Like, all the Jewish libertarian podcasters, they vouch for him. Like,
Okay, yeah, I haven't listened to libertarian podcasts in a few years, so I'm a little bit behind. I was big into libertarian podcasts until probably the end of 2012, like after Occupy, after the Tea Party stuff. I kind of got bored with it, I guess. I just libertarian podcasts are boring.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, they got completely train wrecked by Bitcoin podcasts. You know, they'd been there podcasting, you know, all these cool ideas, and then they missed the one idea that actually could promote their ideology, and they just like totally slept on it. And
that's what happens. I mean, once taxes start to get too expensive, and once inflation starts to actually rear its head, you know, libertarians are just going to lose out because they don't have NGU. Libertarians don't have NGU. Their podcasts don't get any more popular. Their conferences don't get any bigger. Their money's value doesn't, you know, gold. You know, I could just put my money in, you know, the stock market. You know, it's fine. They don't have NGU. It's just, it's kind of a stagnant, they don't get more votes. It's just a stagnant, ideology in terms of, you know, podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like when you couple free markets with NGU, it's a pretty powerful thing. And the fact that they're missing the NGU is definitely what cripples them. Like, you know, a lot of them, you know, promote like gold because they're a bunch of stupid boomers. But
right.
You know, gold doesn't have NGU.
And you know, one of the consequences of not having NGU is that you have to make trade-offs just to survive. And you know, that's in the fiat system. People had to make woke trade-offs. They had to go woke, or else they didn't think they could survive for a while. You know, and that's what happened to the libertarians. They had to go woke in 2024 in the election, and you know, that's why it cost them.
Well, yeah,
Bitcoin podcasters. I mean, Donald Trump promised the libertarians that he would nominate a libertarian for his cabinet, and he eventually had to, you know, take that back because he had too many Bitcoin and Bitcoiners and Bitcoin podcasters that he owed for helping him win because the libertarians didn't help him win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were expecting a libertarian podcaster, but
right,
yeah,
but you know, this happens.
It is.
That's why you need NGU.
You can kind of massage the definition of what a libertarian is. You know what I mean? Because Peter Thiel says he's a libertarian.
Right, exactly. So if you want to say that you're a Bitcoiner and, you know, you post some FUD on the timeline, or somebody asks if they can buy you a beer or pay for an Uber, and you don't have the Lightning wallet to give them an invoice to, they're going to know pretty quickly that you're warping. You're not really a Bitcoiner. But, you know, you could say you're a libertarian, and it's very difficult for anybody to determine if you're telling the truth at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited to hear what the libertarians, how they respond, and they start overlapping with Bitcoin a little bit more, because I really want to hear their thoughts on Tether and the free market of stable coins. That's something I think we should demand the Mises Institute puts out. Like, I want to see Luke Rockwell, handful of these other libertarian influencers do some commentary on Tether.
Yeah, and I want to know, especially for the gold bug libertarians, if you really want to separate money from state, how do you criticize the United States strategic Bitcoin reserve that is going to increase our NGU next year? How do you criticize that when you cheer on governments and central banks buying gold? Like, you claim that gold is valuable because of, you know, governments and central banks using it. Doesn't that make you a hypocrite?
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they start advocating for putting gold on the blockchain, because there's no way to actually validate how much gold these governments have, or if they have any in the first place.
Right. It's like libertarians are praising China for buying gold, or the United States for buying gold, without even verifying, like, with an on-chain address, if that gold is in self-custody or not.
Mm-hmm.
At least Bitcoiners know exactly how much Bitcoin the government buys, and because the government has to tell you, the government has to KYC its addresses to its citizens,
Mm-hmm.
or else Predator will fucking find out right away.
Well, I'm curious about this story. So, Jason Lowery has been flying drones over New Jersey. I think you've followed the story a bit closer than I have. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about what's going on over New Jersey. Some people think it's Iran. Some people think that it's aliens. Donald Trump thinks that, or, Donald Trump posted that a picture of the drones delivering McDonald's to former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is really fat. Some people think that it's a psyop, and I think what we're learning is that it's actually the U.S. government, like the state, is just testing some technology, testing how Americans react to that technology. And Jason Lowery is, he's famous for experimenting with psyops and these block scripts and these other different social media spiff attacks. But now he's taken it to the sky. He's taken it to the sky as a drone commander.
Yeah, it seems like, from my very little research on the topic, that the government has had this problem, or they foresaw this problem, which is that there wasn't enough regulations around the drones, right? Like, individuals had way too much power to be able to, do things without, any real trouble. And so they needed to create some sort of trouble in order to regulate. So they're just educating the market on the need for regulation. They're like, the government's really good at this. So they, a very notable recent showcase of this process was January 6th, where they wanted to show that the government needed more power to wrangle citizens and to surveil them and to, do all these things in order to, keep everybody safe, obviously. And so what they did, people didn't believe them. They're like, we don't need to be surveilled any more than we are. So what they did is they put a bunch of federal agents in the Capitol to essentially, cause some ruckus to educate the market. So it seems like a really smart tactic by Jason and crew at the Space Force flying these drones around.
How do you think he got, how do you think he planned? Why do you think he chose, this particular psyop, this particular strategy, in New Jersey? What do you think he did that?
Well, I think they were thinking, everybody knows that New Jersey sucks, right? Like, people call it America's shithole. You know what I mean? Right. And so I think, the military, they have this attitude, which is, if they're going to terrorize people, let's terrorize people that they don't think matter, And so they're like, let's go screw with the New Jersey people because they suck, because they live somewhere that sucks. And so, like, they've been doing stuff like this for generations, like in rural America, where they, go and, like, kill people's cows. You heard about this phenomenon happening where, ranchers are finding their cows dying in very strange ways.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so, we're in Trump's America. So there's been this big shift where now rural America matters again. And they needed a new testing ground of, citizens to go abuse. And while it doesn't look like they're damaging anybody's property, they are causing some psychological discomfort for these people. And I think that's just, what it is. They figured the people in New Jersey were an easy target. And like, you can't like, do phenomena. So like one of the important parts of like a phenomenon like this for it to work well is you need to be somewhere where there's a lot of people on social media to distribute the information. Right. And in rural America, a lot of these places, they don't even have cell signal. And so that's not so if you're going to go and you're going to terrorize people in like, in Idaho or Wyoming or Montana or, Texas, rural Texas, there's a good chance they might not have cell phones. And so they have to go after, the people living in this kind of like suburban dense sprawl in New Jersey, where they do have cell service for the maximum reach.
Do you think that it seems like, like dumber, like just normies, the TikTok, the people that go viral, the people like flock to it, they're just kind of simpletons, and they're just very easy to impress. And they know that putting some UFOs over the people who are like the Sopranos, they're going to be like, wow, this is aliens and this is real. So like people in like working class neighborhoods in South New Jersey, like they haven't had compliance training. All of these spacecrafts, the lights, the flashing, the colors, the frequency, and the intensity of the lights on each craft were in full compliance with American air traffic control laws. And being able to fool, people in Washington D.C. or New York City with UFOs that were fully compliant with air traffic control, it's going to be very difficult, and people are going to see right through that. But you got a pleb neighborhood in South New Jersey. They're gonna think that those aliens complied. They pre-complied. They're gonna actually fall for like a trick like that. Like that, they would think the aliens would hear about our compliance laws. So it's easy to fool them and see how they react to compliance technology that's just way over their head and way outside of their comprehension.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, I mean, it was good that Jason followed the FAA's rules. The government doesn't always do that. They don't always follow their own rules, unfortunately.
Well, that is why it is so bullish to have somebody like Jason Lowery, having influence in the Pentagon, is because Bitcoin fixes the problems that we constantly talk about on the show about non-compliance and just abhorrent behavior by the state and by the government. Mm-hmm. Jason, because he's a Bitcoiner, because he understands the protocol, when he does a PSYOP, he does not cut any corners. It's because he knows all eyes are on. It's like if Bitcoin has a strategic reserve instead of gold in Fort Knox, everybody knows exactly which logo and which website to go to make sure that the government's, claim about how much Bitcoin they have, they can go to mempool.com and see for themselves and verify that open source. And it fixes everything. Jason Lowery will now have so many more eyes on the Pentagon because he's in charge of protecting the strategic Bitcoin reserve. People know that Jason Lowery, the info or the software author, like they're going to be paying attention. And it's happening in El Salvador. I mean, El Salvador is, they could be a totally communist authoritarian state, but because Bukele has chosen Bitcoin, he can only put people in prison without trial if they really deserve it. He cannot abuse that system because so many people are paying attention now because of Bitcoin. If you're an American and you want to go to Bitcoin Beach and buy poses with your Strike wallet, you want to know that because of Bitcoin, you can do whatever you want in El Salvador and not be punished most likely. But if somebody who's poor and they try to if they try to do something that they deserve to go to jail, they're going to go there for the rest of their life. They won't threaten you.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, like when we're looking at tactics like this that are being employed, so a good parallel of kind of what I think we're watching happen is 9/11, the response to 9/11. So, a lot of people don't realize this, or they've forgotten about it, but you used to be able to smoke on airplanes. You used to be able to travel through airports without, being groped and fried by microwaves. And these CIA funded groups in Al Qaeda, played a part in bombing these buildings in New York, which meant that the general populace needed to be surveilled. Like the CIA funded groups were the problem. They were the ones that theoretically needed to be KYC'd, but that was used as a catalyst to KYC and molest the general population. And I kind of think the same thing is happening here with the drones. The drones are a part of modern warfare today. That's been like a big shift that's happened over the last few years. A lot of these consumer drones can be converted to weapons. And, one thing that we know about the Second Amendment is that if you're purchasing a firearm, it's very important for the government to KYC you super hard and to have a lot of restrictions and regulations. Like the government is the one that creates the most problems with using firearms, in the same way the CIA funded groups are the ones that create the most terrorism. But they use that as a way to surveil you, essentially. So they want to make sure that they can operate their drones non-compliantly, but you have to really, really walk the tightrope of compliance here.
Do you think that we're going to see an acceleration in this type of activity and behavior from? How do you think that Donald Trump's going to make sure that this stuff gets, nipped in the bud right away?
Yeah, I don't know. I could see what do they call it? Red flag drone laws. That's kind of what I see.
Explain that.
So there's this idea with red flag gun laws. So essentially the state can arbitrarily choose to take somebody's firearms because they deem them as dangerous, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah, okay.
Take that and you apply it to drones.
Do you think, how do you think they can enforce that? If they catch a drone, how do they know the person operating the drone, is doing it non-compliantly?
Well, I think they would. A lot of these drones they track them with serial codes, right? And so when you get them, they've worked on the manufacturers so that you have to register with the FAA right off the bat. So you have to be compliant to even use it, right? And they're internet connected. They have a serial number. They do it that way. But there's a lot of people out there that build their own drones non-compliantly that are not registered with the FAA. Probably the majority of drone users are non-compliant at this point.
Can they do is that like Medex with 3D printing? Is he like 3D printing drones?
Yeah, there's people doing that stuff. I think probably with the majority of them, they're just going on the internet and buying different parts and piecing it together and using. I'd be
interested to like if Seed Signer started making do-yourself open source drones.
Well, I mean, that would be like a super useful thing. So, like, imagine somebody comes into your house, with a wrench, and you could take your hardware wallets that are attached to an open source non-KYC drone and fly them to different locations so that they can't even,
or you could
try.
You could fly open dimes over prison walls and drop open dimes to like if one of your best friends from your meetup goes to jail for not paying their taxes, you could still drop an open dime into them in jail, and so they can buy cigarettes in jail.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Or a phone with a custodial lightning wallet, or
you could drop a piece of paper with your input so they could follow you on Nostr and they could communicate with you on Nostr without being censored.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the compliance landscape is for sure changing. And, I don't know.
But
I
but you
kind
know
of wonder
what?
if the non-compliant drone, community is bigger than the 3D printed firearm community.
That's true. But we talked about something off air earlier that I think that maybe applies here is the compliance landscape is changing. But the best way to set yourself up for success in this changing landscape is to not let the government, not let the mainstream media, not let the Bitcoin podcast, usually the non-Bitcoin podcasts, to frame the debate about what compliance is and how compliance, should be developed, and be the ones that you want to be the compliance quintillionaire. You don't want to be the downstream, the complier. You want to be the one who sets the rules and creates the compliance. And the best way to do that is by talking about it on Bitcoin podcasts and memeing about it and posting about it online, because that is where the debate is coming. Bitcoin Twitter is where the public debate happens about what happens from now on. Now that Bitcoin has won and Bitcoin is now the most important part of the government, we frame the narrative on compliance and we can say, no, that's where the influence happens. This is why everybody needs to become an influencer, because we have to influence policy.
The CIA needs to be KYC. They can't have special privileges. If we're going to be KYC, they need to be KYC.
Right.
If they
the
want
power
to
of that.
KYC, then they need to lift KYC regulations on us. But
Right.
I am for equality in this relationship.
Right. The Bitcoin is a check on power. It is not important to KYC a pleb or a Bitcoin miner with his BitAx. It is important to KYC the FBI, KYC the CIA, KYC the DEA, KYC the Treasury. Yeah. Citizens can just log in, go to mempool.space, and verify the government's activity on the chain, as long as they know, their addresses.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is part of the reason why, like, January 6th was so confusing for people, is because the FBI agents that were participating in it were not KYC. And the same thing in this drone situation is, like, we know it's Jason Lowery because we're journalists, but not everybody is a journalist. So, these poor people in New Jersey getting terrorized by Jason, thinking that they're looking at aliens or Iranian drones or who knows what. That's all a failure of the government failing KYC.
So, one of the on the topic of Lowery, he kind of segues us into this next topic, and it was a story we passed today. The CDC officially approved listening to Adam Back in podcast interviews as an alternative to anesthesia. So if you haven't read, people are killing CEOs of insurance companies and threatening others. And one of the reasons why is because these insurance companies are having a hard time paying their taxes. As a result, they are reducing the coverage for medical care, in all the ways that they can, including, there's multiple states that have, cut back on, they would maybe pay for anesthesia for like the first half of surgery, but definitely not the whole surgery. So people needed cost effective alternatives. And listening to Adam Back on a Bitcoin podcast puts users to sleep at a safe enough rate, at a cheap enough rate, that they can actually avoid using anesthesia. And this is an amazing, this is why Jason Lowery is so effective, is that Adam Back has a company called Blockstream. And that company is kind of entirely dependent. Its success and its ability to raise capital and its ability to borrow money and its ability to find talent and employees is built on the, belief that Adam Backney, he might be Satoshi, or at least was involved with Satoshi somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult for him to talk about this and to market his business without putting everybody to sleep. But Jason Lowery wrote an entire book called Soft War, and it's kind of a romantic novella dedicated to the beauty of the hashcash algorithm that was written by Adam Back in his earlier cypherpunk days and used to prevent people from posting NFT scams in his favorite group chats. He kind of filtered that out by making them, buy electricity before they shared a meme with a friend. And Jason Lowery found that. Peter Todd found it so beautiful that he invented Bitcoin and gave Adam Back credit for inventing Bitcoin. So now everybody thinks Adam Back's Satoshi because he inspired Peter Todd. And Jason Lowery's now doing that at a much larger scale. He is telling Adam Back's story and how brilliant he is at writing algorithms and coding C++, that, he's creating he's so good at it that he's going to protect America from World War III. And that's what software is all about. Like, if you have enough of Adam Back's algorithms, you can basically control the world and end war.
Yeah, I've yet to read the book. I got it queued up to read. It's on my list. And
it is essentially, and I think it was Rob Hamilton who told me this, or maybe it was Troy Cross, but he said that software is essentially a love letter to timestamping. And for people who really just are fascinated by digital timestamps and the power of digital timestamps, that's what software is all about.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that were on the fence on whether they should actually read the book or not, right? Like, Jason kind of had his heyday last cycle, and then he disappeared for a little bit, and then he came back, and people are like, okay, do we actually need to read this book or not? If Kamala had won the selection, it probably would have been very relevant. You know what I mean? But, Trump is getting back in, so like he's the guy that started the Space Force, right?
Right, that's true. He's made Orange Berets. He made Orange Berets possible.
Totally. Yeah, he made. Yeah, so he started the Space Force, and he's kind of a Bitcoin pleb. Like, he's about to announce the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. And that all looks super bullish for Jason Lowery, and which is part of the reason why I think he is all excited to run these drone swarms around New Jersey. But like, he feels emboldened. He feels like he's in a power position, and that means he's going to be on a lot of podcasts this cycle, I think.
Do you worry about Jason Lowery's popularity and the fame that's probably going to go to his head? And I mean, if he's on the podcast circuit, in the next year or so, there's going to be a lot of women in Bitcoin who are going to see, an orange-pilled man in uniform, and they're going to be throwing their attention at him. Do you worry that will distract him? He's going to have a huge responsibility of defending America's cold storage Bitcoin from North Korean hackers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very serious threat vector.
Do you think that Anchor Watch is going to try to get the contract to it be the insurance on the strategic Bitcoin reserve?
I doubt it. I think it's all going through Coinbase, right?
Oh, that's right.
So it's going to be Brian Armstrong. So Brian Armstrong is essentially the United States security model.
Do you think that they will keep it at Coinbase, or do you think that they will keep it at Backed? Because Trump's going to buy Backed, the crypto liquidity provider, or Are they going to, Trump has already said that we may annex Canada and make it the 51st state. Do you think that that is a sly, roundabout way of acquiring the rights to Cold Card? So NVK cannot sue President Trump. Donald Trump, lawfare is over. He's not going to put up with lawfare. And then he could acquire the rights to and put all of America's strategic Bitcoiners on the Cold Card.
Well, I think the move to try and annex Canada is probably less about Cold Card and more about trying to acquire all the Canadian Bitcoin podcasters, because there's quite a few of them.
That's what I think is my base case. I think that there's a lot of value. And Trump said he wants to make Bitcoin podcasts in America, but there's some very good Bitcoin podcasts in Canada, and we need to acquire those.
The biggest Bitcoin YouTube channel is BTC Sessions, and he's Canadian. So there's that. There's the Canadian Bitcoin podcast. The country has their own conference. There's Sly Goomba.
There's the Boomer.
Does Boomer have a podcast?
No, Boomer. But Boomer's he's a bigger fan of podcasts. But I mean, he does think Lynn Oldham is hot, so that would be really good cultural assimilation. Because a lot of the Canadian podcasters know that Lynn Oldham is hot.
Totally.
And I just realized this would kill two birds with one stone. So the United States would get two things that they want most, which is they want the Canadian Bitcoin podcasters, and they want to tetherize Canada because Canada's currency is failing. They got to 100K way before us, and Trump is not going to let that happen again. Donald Trump is never going to, Joe Biden let Canada get to 100K before the United States. Donald Trump is not going to let Canada get to $1 million before the United States. So he's going to tetherize Canada before he pumps Bitcoin to $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it seems like a smart strategic move. Like you look at the places with the highest concentrations of Bitcoin podcasters, bringing Canada under the U.S. empire's umbrella would be really kind of centralizing it. I guess like one of the things that I'm looking for this cycle. So, we see these videos of these Chinese influencing warehouses. You know what I'm talking about? Where they have all the
right.
That could pose a serious threat. So I'm not sure what the U.S. government's plan is to defend against that, because they don't have the infrastructure that the Chinese do to be able to spin up, potentially thousands of Bitcoin podcasts instantly if they want to.
What do you think? China was a very major focal point and importance to Bitcoin, especially the Bitcoin price and to the control of Tether. And, the 2017 cycle up until, 2021. And they still are very important, relatively speaking, but they've lost a lot of ground and they've lost a lot of influence. But most importantly, for all we know, they've lost out on a lot of Bitcoin podcasts. They don't have access to as many. I don't know. And maybe they do. Maybe there are Bitcoin podcasts in China that we can't, listen to, or maybe they're considering them differently. However, I think that there's more in the United States, more hours, and they're not hearing them. How do they catch up? How can they spit up a Bitcoin podcast in the United States, or, millions of them? And people would not know that this is way behind. Like these guys have not listened to enough hours of Bitcoin podcasts. They don't know what they're talking about.
Well, if there's one thing I know about Chinese people is they oftentimes work significantly harder than, Western folks. So and this is something like, why is it so important to listen to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a week? is because there's a Chinese person out there that's willing to listen to 80 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a week. And they haven't started yet, but, just because you might have the lead in hours listened right now doesn't mean that there's not somebody, trying to catch you.
Right. So that raises a really important point. Donald Trump has, he's promised to put a lot of tariffs on China. And if Donald Trump put tariffs on Bitcoin podcasts and mining, for example, and China started listening to their own Bitcoin podcasts, and they started listening to 80 hours a week on 1.5 speed, and they started, that would probably show you hash rate is correlated to hours that Bitcoin podcasts consumed. If China started to lap us and double and triple our efforts, they could potentially grow the hash rate in their favor and grow the hours listed. I mean, there's billions of Chinese people. If they're listening to 80 hours a week, they're going to outnumber us.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, all the podcasting gear is made in China, right? As well as all the Bitcoin miners. So they're really they're sitting on all the infrastructure. So it could be really problematic. If we go into a bull market and Americans cannot buy podcasting gear, because the Chinese choose to, retaliate to Trump's tariffs on podcasts, that could be pretty detrimental.
I mean, think about it this way. I think they've already started attacking. If they haven't, I haven't seen any evidence yet of them attacking Bitcoin podcast equipment, but I have seen them going after Bitcoin podcast listener equipment. They are blowing up AirPods every time Sly Goomba listens to Bitcoin podcasts. His AirPods break and he can't listen to them anymore. And he has to go out and he has to buy new headphones every time he wants to listen to Bitcoin podcasts. I think the Chinese are sabotaging it. They're trying to make it harder and more expensive for you to listen to Bitcoin podcasts.
Totally. I almost think that we need to set up a fund essentially to get people like Goomba the proper equipment to listen to podcasts. It's almost like a charity. We could imagine if we took a portion of the podcast or the Fountain Boost, and it's kind of like when you go to a grocery store where they're round up $1 to donate to this kid that can't afford food, and you click no. But in this case, it's actually a compelling argument, which is instead of feeding hungry kids, you're essentially getting the proper equipment to feed hungry minds.
Yeah. Something I've noticed, and maybe we should do a highly credentialed research analysis report on this, but it's hard for me to find an exception. Countries that are on the USDT standard are correlated with having access to Bitcoin podcasts. If you live in a country on the USDT Tether standard, you are more likely to have access to the Bitcoin podcast hours that you need to succeed in life and to be able to afford your taxes. So it seems like Donald Trump understands this, whether intuitively or not, and is trying to spread the USDT standard across the globe to give people in the global south, to give people in developing nations and Western industrialized nations access to the Bitcoin podcasts hours that they need to fix their countries. China does not have that right now. So they are right now behind, but they could catch up quickly.
Yeah. Well, I will say the U.S. definitely has first mover advantage here.
Absolutely.
Well, before we get into the Fountain Boost, did you want to talk about the Bugles?
Oh yeah, of course. If you haven't seen, or you haven't heard about the Bugles, you can go to our Twitter page at Bitcoin_Bugle, and you can see the pinned tweet. The Bugles, listen, it is long overdue that Bitcoin podcasts and Bitcoin podcasters are recognized and celebrated for the important content that they create. It's the most important content being created in the world right now. We've just talking about how important they are. Countries may be going to war, at least trade wars, to proliferate and protect Bitcoin podcasts. And, the CIA was able to gain, and it was so, movies, cinema, film, Hollywood was so important for the last generation. It shaped culture around the world. It shaped attitudes about democracy around the world, and the CIA knew that, and they got that stuff everywhere. And one of the ways that they reinforced its value was to create an awards show called the Academy Awards, and they would give Oscar trophies to the best actors and the best movies and the best, the CIA's most productive and most talented employees would get the recognition they deserved for the content they created that was really, it was shaping policy around the world and culture around the world. And we need to do that for Bitcoin podcasters because we are the vanguard. We are the avant-garde. We are the movers, the influencers of history. And we need to recognize the Bitcoin podcasters who we're separating this culture from state. It's no longer the CIA who's in control of the world economy and culture. It is Bitcoin podcasters and Bitcoiners in a decentralized fashion. And we need to reward and so we're going to have a show. It's called The Bugles. It's going to be live streamed in January. There's going to be real trophies. There's going to be real nominations, real winners. It's going to be a real production. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be the best Bitcoin podcast award show ever. And we're the perfect people to do it because we are the only credentialed journalists in Bitcoin. And if you are going to recognize the best Bitcoin podcast or the best Bitcoin podcaster, the most important category in the world, it's got to be from somebody with credentials that makes that decision and tells you which podcast is the most valuable. And that's what we're going to do. We hope you tune in and you should check it out. And if you're a Bitcoin podcaster or a Bitcoin podcast listener who wants to contribute to this and be a part of this historical orange pilling event, reach out to us wherever you communicate with us on the intellectual Silk Road, and let us know how you would like to get involved, because this is going to be a open source. It's going to be open source like the cold card. Ultimately, I get to make the decisions because or we get to make the decisions because we're the founders. But you can definitely review and give your opinions.
Yeah, I mean, seeing as Bitcoin has won, it's important for Bitcoin podcasters to pat themselves on the back. And so I think this is just an opportunity to do that. Like there's not enough credit that we give ourselves for the role that we've played in shaping human history. And that's why this award show is so important.
Right. It's easy to take for granted all the hard work we do making Bitcoin podcasts and listening to Bitcoin podcasts. And it's easy to get so caught up in it that you forget to step back and appreciate how important you are and how ethical and how smart and how right for everybody else you were about the most important technology in human history. And Bitcoin podcasters don't give themselves enough credit, don't talk about their wins enough, and so they deserve it. We're going to give them credit.
Yeah. I mean, the CIA has patted themselves on the back very enthusiastically with the Golden Globes for a while.
Right. The Academy Awards, the Emmys, the Grammys, the Golden Globes, all of those. If the CIA gets 5 or 6 or 7, award shows, Bitcoiners deserve one. And if Bitcoiners deserve an award show, they deserve it to be thrown by the Bugle.
I mean, who else would throw it?
Exactly.
PodConf?
Nobody's going to watch that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited about it. Well, we'll keep everybody posted about what's going on with that. Yeah. But like Rod said, if you want to be a part of it in some way, just reach out to us and we'll discuss potential options. All right. Fountain boost. Miss Hodlnut is back with the first boost for 20,000 sats. She says, sorry, took a week off last week. Life's been crazy. Found a new guy who treats me right, unlike Rod.
Wow. Miss Hodlnut, I hope this is the end of our current chapter. I'm sure we'll have a bull market chapter. But I'm happy for you. I'm glad. I hope this person keeps you out of my hair. I got the Bugles to worry about.
Well, I think this kind of brings up an interesting concern, which is if this cycle is really the cycle, everybody gets a significant other, boyfriend or girlfriend. How do you prevent that relationship from taking away from your ability to listen to Bitcoin podcasts?
Yeah, exactly. You want a relationship that is conducive to you listening to as many hours of Bitcoin podcasts as possible, but at least 40 hours a week. And if you are in a relationship where you're arguing, there's drama, fighting, games, those are taking away from your time of listening to Bitcoin podcasts.
Yeah.
And so, the more hours you have to listen, the more healthy your relationship is.
Well,
me and Ms. Hodlnut did not have a healthy, a healthy relationship. It was drama.
Do you suggest listening to Bitcoin podcasts with your significant other? Like, on Friday night for date night, you get a nice bottle of Pony Lane wine from Ben Justman. You might play like Higher by Creed to get in the mood, and then you listen to a Len Alden podcast to kind of get steamy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the kind of Bitcoin podcast that girls listen to, they might want to listen to Shinobi because they think he's hot, but they might not necessarily like, some of the more alpha based Bitcoin podcasts like Ungovernable Misfits. You don't have to listen to all of the same podcasts, but there should be a few rock solid podcasts that both of you enjoy, whether, like you said, what Bitcoin did with, especially with Len Alden is on, or, some other one. It's trying to have at least one that you listen to together every week. And, when you come home from work every day, use the latest news from Dennis Porter and Dennis Porter's latest announcements to, kind of discuss those. And, hey, did you see what Dennis Porter reported about Texas? Or did you hear what happened on Spaces? And you can kind of use that to get on the same page and kind of stay in sync. But you don't have to, you can have your own podcast, but you should definitely listen to some together. A family that listens to Bitcoin podcast together stays together, I think is probably a way to sum it up.
Well, thanks for the boost. I mean, good luck with your relationship. I don't think getting in a relationship is an excuse not to listen to podcasts, Miss Hodlnut. That's a pretty shitty excuse to me.
Yeah.
But glad you're back.
Yeah. And please don't be like Haley, or Kaylee, and being some of Monero guy and stop listening to Bitcoin podcasts. Really hate to see you waste your life that way. But anyways, thank you. Like you said, next line is from Open Mike, 7,707 sats. Bugle Wild High Club check-in, hitting 40 hours from 30,000 feet by listening to Bitcoin pod in flight to Bitcoin events. Hell yeah, dude. That is how you know. That's how you made it. You listen to Bitcoin podcast. You're traveling through time and space to different Bitcoin nodes. On the map. That's something to the low time preference.
Well, I think Open Mike is when he sent that boost was traveling to is it Austin where this fountain event's happening with Toonster?
Oh yeah. The big event there.
Yeah.
It's like South by Southwest or something, but like it's Sats by Southwest.
Yeah, the one where I think Ainsley Costello
Oh
is
yeah.
performing.
Oh
Adam Curry, I think's there too. Yeah, it's like a live music event. So, I mean, how fucking cool is it to be able to listen to the Bugle Weekly, participate in the value for value economy, while also going to build the value for value music economy? I would give an Open Mic a
that sounds way better than going to a Diddy party to be in the Grammy Awards in Fiat music. That's what I would say. I would also, when you're there in Austin, if you see Oscar or any of the decision makers at Fountain, you should tell them that people are saying that Fountain should live stream the Bugles. So, that's what people are saying. I just, hope they hear it. Love Fountain. Well, South by Southwest looks dope.
That'd be very cool to live stream the Bugles on Fountain. I imagine we're probably going to be using Zap.stream. Might as well use Toonster as well if Open Mic's open to it. I know it's not like necessarily a live music performance, but we're discussing having some live music performances.
Yeah. Right now, I'm looking and South by Southwest, like it's live streaming right now from Austin, Texas. So it's going on. So tomorrow, if you hear this and you're interested, you should go on the Fountain, social media channels or go on the app, and there's probably some replays here or some videos, but it looks pretty cool. It looks like it looks better than a Bitcoin magazine live stream. I'll tell you that.
It definitely looks better than a PodConf live stream. Well, thank you for the boost, Open Mic. I love hearing about the Bugle Mile High Club. That's super dope. Next boost is from our good friend We All Eat for 5,421 sats. And they say, Bugle influences me so much. I can't think for myself and absolutely need Dickie and Roddy to tell me what I need to do. When Alden is hot, we must comply, and I love first responders. Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, we're talking about why Jason Lowery chose New Jersey to fly the drones. It's because it is because of people like We All Eat. Like that's he's in New Jersey, so that's why they chose that place.
I don't know if We All Eat's in New Jersey. That's interesting.
No, I'm not saying he's in New Jersey. Maybe he is. I was just saying, that's what people in New Jersey are kind of like. It's like that's the kind of fountain boost they leave.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, I'm excited. I think we're gonna have We All Eat on the Wednesday show here pretty soon.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah,
he really has a crush on Michelle Weekly, so he's gonna hopefully be able to send this to her, and hopefully she likes it or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, this girl on Spaces got him trapped.
Yeah, Girls on Spaces. There's a whole song about it.
Can you sing a little bit of it? She's got a cold car,
block, and hates KYC, and the badge on her blouse means she's not right for me. But when they did was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another Fed, and Chet was the yield.
Oh yeah. Well, cool.
The next one we got, is old friend of the show. Haven't seen him in a few weeks, or maybe I just forgot. Orange Mart, 5,000 sats. Merry Christmas. Are you gonna have time over the holidays to get back and play some more Orange Mart?
Probably not, unfortunately.
Maybe next year the Bugles can take place in Orange Mart.
Well, we need to do something in the Orange Mart eventually. That's probably been one of my biggest shortcomings, is that I did take a tour of the Orange Mart, but that's about as far as I've gone. I've yet to do an event or a podcast in there, which I think is one of the coolest ways you can actually use the Orange Mart and what they built is to kind of use the ability of having a video game character as an avatar or something.
And, if you listen to our episode with Sly Goomba, one of the reasons that people need to buy Bitcoin is so they can afford to play video games. And sometimes that, Orange Mart isn't, you don't have to pay $70 like you have to do for Call of Duty, but you have to pay with your time. And it's just, you have to have a lower time preference, but it's worth it.
I'm bullish on Orange Mart. It's a really cool thing that they built. It's a very cool thing. It's cool when people build things. You know what I mean? Next boost is from our good friend Pies for 1,000 sats. Says LFG with like 7 or 8 exclamation points. 40 hours plus with only 5 exclamation points. Good job. This guy's doing the work.
Yeah, not only does this guy listen to like 80 hours of Bitcoin podcasts per week, I think he also works construction, and he smokes a lot of cigarettes, and he drinks a lot of beer, and he's still that enthusiastic, that many exclamation points. He's got that much energy. That man is an animal. He's fucking alpha as fuck. Pies is probably our most alpha follower. I think that's probably hands down. But thanks, Pies. And honestly, we need to figure out a way to give you an award at the Bugles.
I agree. Pies is definitely.
The other day, Arizona and Huddle said that energy drinks were a shitcoin. And I thought, that's really annoying. Arizona and Huddle's annoying. But people who are builders, they need energy drinks because it's a lot of effort. But I think I just need whatever Pies is on, because I don't think I would need energy drinks if I had what Pies is on.
I think he's just bullish. I think you just need to be bullish. Like people need to be more bullish. They've been way too accustomed to being bears, and
bears hibernate in the winter. That's why so many people are so sleepy right now. They're sleeping on Bitcoin, they're sleeping on Dennis Porter, and they're sleeping on the bull market that's coming.
Yeah, it's time to come out of hibernation. That's for sure.
Pies also hit us again with 100 sats. And then he did the normal beer, mushroom, and cigarette emoji. But so yeah, thank you for that base as well, Pies. I mean, he came back. He listens to 40 Hours of Bitcoin podcast, and he comes back to the podcast he listened to during that week, and he has time to comment and leave boost different days. It's awesome. The guy has, I can't say enough about it. The next one is from FOMO Chronic, 1,001 sats. Really just left the base tits. Hell yeah, man. I don't know if that's an acronym for something else in cryptography and Bitcoin, but if it's just normal lady milkers, couldn't think of a better thing to say.
It could also be male milkers, so seed oil enjoyers tend to grow tits.
Not our listeners, though.
Probably not. They're probably thinking about things on a Bitcoin standard.
Hell yeah.
Well, I'm about to piss my pants. Let's blast through the last of these. The user is just at, and they say, oh, well, if you click on it, their username says Ank Morpok on Noster. Laughing emojis, Al Qaeda democracy. Love it. Keep up the sarcasm. I don't have any. I don't know. I don't understand the reference to sarcasm. I mean, the CIA has funded Al Qaeda since the beginning. They continue to, and it's obviously done for democracy because they only do things for democracy, right? It's good for the economy. Next boost from user 43417785 for 555 sats says, thank you for summarizing the news for us. No problem. BTC on board, 300 sats, couple emojis, the lightning fire 100 emoji. That's it that I have for the boost on my side. You got any response to those last three I just read off real quick?
No. I think if anybody thinks that Bitcoin podcasters like us are being sarcastic in our content, they need to listen a little bit more and take it a little bit more seriously. But thank you for the boost anyway. I think that maybe we're a little too you're just not used to listening to journalists like us. If you're coming from the mainstream media, so maybe it's like sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to interpret. But I think if you keep listening, you'll realize that we're very serious.
Totally. Well, you got any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
Man, if we got one or two episodes before Christmas, right? If I don't talk to you, if you don't listen to us before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas. Orange pill as many family members as you can. We're about to go to the moon, and the bull market's coming fast, so you're running out of time to convince your grandma to get on zero.
Well, thank you to everyone who tuned in and boosted this episode, and we'll catch you later.
Relics of a bygone youth. Mourning is a part of living. Getting old is not forgiving. Those days may be gone, but new ones lie ahead. This is just another dawn. There's no need for dread. But it kind of sucks getting old. You're grown, but you still do as you're told. Days are getting shorter as time goes by, passing quickly and you don't know why. It might be hard to grasp this truth. This is the funeral for your youth. If you had known then what you know now, would you do it again? Or did you forget somehow? The struggle to find direction, a pursuit to achieve near perfection. The pressures you could have lived without, and so many days filled with doubt. Being young is being naive, but it set the groundwork for you to achieve. Days are getting shorter as time goes by, passing quickly and you don't know why. It might be hard to grasp this truth. This is the funeral for your youth. A chapter is ended, a new one started, but there's no reason to be brokenhearted. A beautiful wife and a loving family achieved after escaping calamity. As time goes on, everything will change, and remembering this moment might feel strange. To mourn your youth when you're hitting your prime is really just an atrocious crime. You're not a geezer, you're only 30. There's not reason to feel ill insecurity. Days are getting shorter as time goes by, passing quickly and you don't know why. It might be hard to grasp this truth, but this is the funeral for your youth. No. Basketball shorts and combat boots, relics of a bygone youth. Mourning is a part of living. Getting old can be forgiving.